This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 52, Need, and our symbol is the stone ring terangrial, or the twisted stone ring terangrial.
Because we are in Teleron-Riyadh for most of this one.
For a moment, Nynaeve stood in the heart of the stone, not seeing it, not thinking of Teleron-Riyadh at all. Aginin was Shan-Chan, one of those vile people who had put a collar on Egwene's neck and tried to put one on hers. Knowing it still made her feel hollow. Shan-Chan. And she had snaked her way into Nynaeve's affections. True friends had seemed so few and far between since leaving Emond's Field. To find a new one, then lose her in this way. I hate her for that, worst of all, she growled, folding her arms tightly. She made me like her, and I cannot stop, and I hate her for it. Said aloud, it made no sense at all. I do not have to make sense, she laughed quietly with a rueful shake of her head. I'm supposed to be Aes Sedai, but not to be wool-gathering like a fool girl. Kalendor sparkled, the crystal sword rising out of the floor stones beneath the great dome, and the massive red stone columns ran off in shadowed rows through that odd, dim light that came from everywhere. Easy to remember the feeling of being watched, to imagine it again. If it had been imagination before, if it was now, anything might be hiding back in there. A good stout stick appeared in her hands, and she peered among the columns. Where was Egwene? Just like the girl to keep her waiting. All that murkiness. For all she knew, something could be about to jump out of, that is an odd-dressed Nynaeve. Just stifling a yelp, she spun around heavily, rattling metallically, heart-thumping in her throat. Egwene stood on the other side of Kalendor with two women in bulky skirts and dark shawls over white blouses. Snowy hair held by folded scarves falling to their waists. Nynaeve swallowed, hoping none of them noticed, tried to make herself breathe normally again, sneaking up on her that way. One of the Aiel women she knew from Elaine's description. Amisa's face was much too young for such hair, but apparently it had been almost silver even as a child. The other, thin and bony, had pale blue eyes and a leathery, wrinkled face. That must be Bear. The tougher of the two, in Nynaeve's opinion, now that she saw them. Not that this Amis looked very odd dress. I rattled? Staring down at herself, she gasped. Her dress looked vaguely like a Two Rivers garment, if Two Rivers women wore dresses fashioned from steel mail, with pieces of plate armor like those she had seen in Shinar. How did men run about and jump into saddles in these things? It dragged her at her shoulders as if it weighed 100 pounds. The good stick was metal now, and spiked at the end like a shiny steel sand burr. Without touching her head, she knew she had on some sort of helmet. Blushing furiously, she concentrated, changed it all to good Two Rivers woolens and a walking staff. It felt good to have her hair back in a proper braid, hanging over her shoulder. Uncontrolled thoughts are troublesome when you walk the dream, Bear said in a thin, strong voice. You must learn to control them if you mean to continue. I can control my thoughts very well, thank you, Nynaeve said crisply. Bear's voice was not at all thin. Bear's voice was not at all that was thin. Bear's voice was not all that was thin. I am sorry, guys. Wow, okay. The two wise ones seemed misty, almost, and Egwene, in a pale blue riding dress, was very nearly transparent. What's the matter with you? Why do you look that way? You try entering Teleron-Riyadh while half asleep in a saddle, Egwene said dryly. She seemed to flicker. It is morning in the Threefold Land, and we are on the move. I had to talk Amis into letting me come at all, but I was afraid you would be worried. It is difficult enough task without the horse, Amis said, sleeping shallowly when you wish to be awake. Egwene has not learned it entirely yet. I will, Egwene said, with an irritated determination. She was always too hasty and stubborn in her desire to learn. If these wise ones did not hold onto the scruff of her neck, she would very likely jump into all sorts of trouble.
Yeah.
Too late.
That has to be my favorite Nynaeve dressing in the wrong thing moment. Is like the full armor, like plate mail and everything, just like popping up around her as she's thinking, and then having people pop up behind her and being like, don't sneak up on me. This captures the Nynaeve persona so well, is the way I think about her.
And of course, Nynaeve worries maybe even a little bit more or a little less, I'm not sure, when Egwene and Nynaeve start exchanging information, as we typically see in these scenes. Mm-hmm. And Nynaeve gets the update about the attack on Cold Rock's Hold, the drag car, that Sayanna was attacked and died in the battle.
Yeah, the only other or one of the 4 Dreamwalkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, just basically, again, another bit of recap.
Which
is good, because there's a lot going on, so it's helpful that Jordan's like, okay, remember what just happened? Because that was pretty momentous in that last chapter.
Yeah.
I love her advice for Elaine. The best you can do for Rand is just keep telling him to read those letters. And, Rand's like, what? Those letters don't make any sense. They're contradictory. I love
the second letter directly contradicts the first, and everybody's like, well, just read the letters, and then you'll get it. He's like, whatever, man. And then the conversation kind of turns to Nynaeve trying to ply the Wise Ones for some kind of advice or help. She's trying to figure out this problem with Amathera and the Black Aja. She is soon to find out that there's a Forsaken loose that's directing the Black Aja and everything. So I think one of the first things she asks is if she can enter Amathera's dreams to spy on her. Although I think the Wise Ones could probably do it, they tell Nynaeve to absolutely not do such a thing. Essentially, their warning is that it's not like here. If you enter her dream, you're in her head, and she will be in control. And if she doesn't know who you are, bad things could happen.
And we see that happen when, Egwene gets sucked into Gawain's dreams. She's under his total control, and she likes it. But, doing that in a stranger, they'd probably be scared of you. They may treat you, badly. And I just want to make a point that probably means that Lanfear pulled Rand out of his dream and into either a pocket world or a version of Teleron Riyadh that was sort of a duplicate of that when she was in his dream. Because I don't think she entered his dream, and he certainly was not in control of her at that point. Do you notice that when she acts foolish, they make her they turn her clothes into that of a little girl, just like they did with Egwene, and Egwene all smiles and laughs and is like hee hee, she gets the joke, but Nynaeve doesn't. It's pretty. I enjoyed that little side note. That thing about dressing like a little girl is sort of this background theme that's come up a couple of times with Rand and Nynaeve and Egwene.
And Bear says, kind of sets Nynaeve off, says, even if you're an Aes Sedai, you're still a foolish girl. And Nynaeve's like, I'm not a girl. And then she's standing there in the girl's outfit.
And it's like, yes, you are.
She's like, and I am in control of my thoughts. And and then abruptly she realized her single braid had split into 2, and so on. And then Amis says the same thing again. She just says, uncontrolled thoughts, Amis said, can be very troublesome indeed, Nynaeve Sedai, until you learn.
It's a very Aes Sedai answer from a wise one.
Despite her bland tone, her lips quirked in a barely masked amusement.
Aiel humor. It's the best. So then she says, can I pull her out of the dream? And they say, no, that's evil. Which is why I think that's what Lanfear was doing to Rand.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, what can I do? And they're like, well...
Amis and Bear essentially warn Nynaeve, okay, there's a way, but it's extremely dangerous. And Nynaeve's like, cool, I'll be careful. And Amis says, it is not possible, Amis told her flatly, but I do not know another way. Meaning, basically, it is impossible to be careful. That's why we're warning you.
Right. I feel like this almost James Bondish of Nynaeve to be like, yeah, I don't care. I know it's a dangerous mission. Whatever. I'm going in. That. I feel like James Bond would have that very similar attitude. He'd be like, sure, whatever. I'm prepared for anything. I've got my cannon on I've got my gun. I've got my, whatever gun he used to carry. It's just casual attitude. If I had
Lan is the Bond girl in this.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like it.
He's there to look pretty.
Need is the key. When there are too many people for the hold, the sept must divide, and the need is for water at the new hold. If no location with water is known, one of us may be called to find one. The key then is the need for a proper valley or canyon not too far from the first, with water. Concentrating on that need will bring you near to what you want. Concentrating on the need again will bring you closer. Each step brings you nearer. until at last you are not only in the valley, but standing beside where the water is to be found. It may be harder for you, because you do not know exactly what you are seeking, though the depth of need may make up for it. And you know already, in a rough fashion, where it lies, in this palace. The danger is this, and you must be aware of it. The wise one leaned toward her intently, driving her words home with a sharp tone as sharp as her gaze. Each step is made blind, with eyes closed. You cannot know where you will be when you open your eyes, and finding the water does no good if you are standing in a den of vipers. The fangs of a mountain king kill as quickly in the dream as waking. I think these women Egwene speaks of will kill more quickly than the snake. I did that, Egwene exclaimed. Nynaeve felt her jump as the Aiel woman's eyes went to her. Before I met you, she said hastily. Before we went to Tyr. Need. Nynaeve felt warmer toward the Aiel women now that one of them had given her something she could use. You must keep a close eye on Egwene, she told them, hugging the younger woman to show she meant it fondly. You are right, Bear. She will try to do more than she knows how. She has always been that way. For some reason, Bear arched a white eyebrow at her. I do not find her so, Amy said in a dry voice. She is a biddable student. Now. Is that not so, Egwene? Egwene's mouth set in a stubborn line. These wise ones did not know her well enough if they believed a Two Rivers woman would call herself biddable. On the other hand, she did not say anything. That was unexpected. As hard a lot as Aes Sedai, it appeared, these Aiel women. Her hour was slipping away, and impatience bubbled to try this method now. If Elaine woke her, it might take hours to get back to sleep. In 7 days, she said, one of us will meet you here again. Egwene nodded. In 7 days, Rand will have shown himself to the clan chiefs as he who comes with the dawn, and the Aiel will all be behind him. The wise one's eyes shifted slightly, and Amis adjusted her shawl. Egwene did not see it. The light knows what he means to do then.
Can I just comment how stupid it is to have the meeting place be the Stone of Tyr? It's like, oh, this
everybody's
place
meeting place.
Yeah. Where it feels like people are watching us. Oh, well.
Right. It's Cheers, but everyone's hiding in the shadows, pointing a gun into the...
Everyone wants to kill your face. Dun, 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 dun. Because they do it all the time. Well, and you know what happened to the fairy garden that Egwene used to pop up into Tel'aran'rhiod into? Like, where is that? That's just gone. Never mention that place again.
Right, and that's such a sensible place to... If I had to pick a secret place to meet, I would pick a place that nobody else would even know about.
Yeah, like, hey, let's pick a clearing in the forest from our childhood that no one knows that we've ever been to, and meet there, and no one's ever going to find you.
Yeah, right. Or who cares? Some farmer's basement that lives at the edge of town. It doesn't matter. It just has to be some place that no one would ever find. Pick
a random address out of the phone book. Seriously.
It's like when you're hiding cash in your house, you pick a weird place, not a secure place.
I'm going to stick it under my mattress. No one will ever find it there.
Come on, that's where everyone hides stuff.
Right. That's what I feel like they're doing. It's just oh yeah, we're just gonna meet where we are in the real world, or just meet in where this sword is. I mean, I guess the only person who was there a lot was Bilal, and he's dead.
Yeah.
We do know. I think all the heroes are watching.
I think so.
I think that's part of the part of the eyes they see in Tel'aran'rhiod and feel in Tel'aran'rhiod a lot. Brigida says she watches them a lot whenever she can. And then we know there's others. Yeah, right now. And we know this, I'm thinking Moghedien watches them sometimes. And
she realized she had not told Egwene about Aeginen. Perhaps best not to stir up Egwene's memories of her captivity. Nynaeve could remember all too well the other woman's nightmares for weeks after she was freed, waking up screaming that she would not be chained. And I totally agree. It was unnecessary detail that will just stress Egwene out.
Yeah, but it's also sort of hiding it from her a little bit. It's not necessary, but it's also ooh, she still is processing what just happened with Ashanchan, so she's oh, let me figure that out. I'll let her know later. It's a little bit of hiding.
She did just figure all that out an hour ago anyway.
She's still pissed. She's still very pissed. But it does also make sense. I mean, Egwene has, we talked about some serious PTSD from being used and nearly broken. It's maybe not the best thing to bring that up.
Yeah.
She does get better with it, but it's something she has to process quite a bit.
And then the wise ones go after their advice and warnings and bring Egwene with her, and Nynaeve decides to disguise herself, or change her dress and look more like a Tanshikan woman, or like a local.
Right. And then in the process, she realizes for the first time that you can't, not only can you change your face and dress and hair, you can actually, or not only can you change your dress and hair, you can change your face and actually look like somebody different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a cute scene where I imagine Nynaeve's like, well, I want to look like, have a nice dress like this woman. And it's Rendra, the innkeeper. She changes her clothes and her hair, and she realizes she has blonde hair. And she's like, oh, that's funny. I wonder what I look like. And then a tall mirror appears, and she looks into it, and she sees the innkeeper.
It's a good disguise. It's like the Mask of Mirrors, only without channeling.
Yeah, exactly. Which made me think, and I'm surprised that she didn't think of it, she could disguise herself as Leandrin if she wanted to.
Sure.
And just show up at places,
Yeah. That's actually an interesting idea, is like pretend to be one of the Black Sisters. So if they see you, they're like, oh, hey, Leandrin, how you doing? Unless, of course, Leandrin sees you.
You can just be like, hey, by the way, did I show you this new great torture weave? Check it out. Bam.
Yeah, just lower your defenses for a second.
And then Nynaeve starts trying the need thing.
Where she closes her eyes. And this is something we saw Egwene do, and that's how she found Amis in the first place, is she was thinking about what she needed.
Right.
And jumped right. I think we talked about that back in that chapter, is that was like her doing the need thing without realizing it. And here we said she goes, oh yeah, I did that. And it's like, yep, you sure did. Once again, prophecy and need and the pattern brought two people together who needed to be together, and that was Egwene and the Wise Ones.
It's kind of fun, and they're like, the things that Nynaeve thinks about are almost like keywords or like search terms, When she closing her eyes, she concentrated on Tanshiko, on the Panarch's palace, on need, something dangerous to Rand, the Dragon Reborn, need, and it lurches, she moves, and she's standing looking at Amathera, who's tied to a bedpost, being mentally, emotionally tortured by Tamael, one of the members of the Black Aja.
So if Teleron Riyadh is the internet, does that mean the need thing is basically Google? It's like, just close your eyes and hit I'm feeling lucky, and you never know what you're going to get. Like, it's dangerous. You could occasionally get like some porn, but it will, I guarantee you, eventually. You just keep doing that. It'll lead you to exactly what you need on the internet. I promise.
Right. So she enters all these search terms.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going.
Yeah, she enters all these search terms, and then she gets something like kind of close to what she was looking for, but not quite.
Yeah. Check page 2 of results, please. Like it's not on page 1.
Maybe a little more specific. Well, we talked about this in the last episode, but we see Tamael is like laying on a couch sipping wine or something like that, and Amathera is tied to a bedpost
with the power or with just rope. Not really sure.
It says she stood stiffly with her back against one of the posts, so she's probably tied with the power.
Yeah.
Because Nynaeve won't be able to see if she is.
Nynaeve did not have to see her face to know the large blue eyes and fox-like shape, or see the bonds of air holding the woman against the bedpost to know she was looking at Tamaila. So yeah. Bonds of air holding her against the bedpost.
Was it Tamaila?
Tamaila Kinderode.
I've been saying Tamael my entire life.
Again, I think the audiobooks are Tamaila.
Yeah, well, I prefer to go with that.
Yeah.
And she's making her sing this, or she says, the next song I'm going to teach you is I Have Loved 1,000 Sailor Men.
Which is a body song.
Obviously.
Depends on what you mean by love.
Not from afar.
Yeah. Because, like, I feel like you could make that an innocent song about sitting on a dock and dreaming about, finding the perfect relationship with a sailor who walks by. Or you could do what it really is about, which is making a living in one of the oldest jobs.
And I believe as Tamael is kind of berating, or Tamaila is kind of berating Amathera, Nynaeve realizes she's Amathera. Must say her name. And then Nynaeve sees what's going on and realizes that question is answered.
Yeah.
She's captive.
Which one of the three is she? Well, she's pretty sure they're not just regular Aes Sedai because of the whole being tortured. And I hope they're not allies because of the whole being tortured. So that kind of points to captive.
Speak of landing in a viper's den. Tamila Kinderode, the black sister Amiko had said enjoyed causing pain, enjoyed it enough to have made one of the Black Aja comments. Good line.
Good thing she dropped in behind her. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, amongst a bunch of murderers and torturers, they're all like, whoa, but this one, she's messed up.
Kind of reminds me, you remember Con Air with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like they get on the plane and there's that one guy who's got the mask on and they're all like fucking terrified of him. And it's like, it's on this plane full of murders and criminals. There's the one guy who the rest of them are terrified of.
Right.
And of course, it turns out to be Steve Buscemi because, he's a weirdo.
Of course. I'm trying to remember who the other Khan was. That's a good movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, corny as hell, but I love it. It was one of those movies that was just like on TV on repeat for a long, long time. So I saw it in chunks before I ever saw the whole thing with like a lot of commercial interruptions and all the important bits cut out. God, I don't miss those days. Thank you, Netflix. You've saved us. Thank you, Netflix. You're our only hope. Well, I guess Amazon Prime. Sorry. I don't want to betray our bastards and Wheel of Time overlords.
At some point, Tamila notices Amathera's looking at something, and she says, "What are you looking at?" And Nynaeve shifts again, and she's walking through essentially the kind of palace museum.
Yeah, well, she closes her eyes and uses Need one more time, and it transports her into the museum.
Yeah.
Basically, it gets her pretty close, and while doing so, she encounters this odd-looking woman.
Yeah, there's a description here. I feel like, have we gone over this? I feel like we've gone over this. Just like what the museum looks like. It's like, the white columns, the silk ropes like at a theater that block people off from glass cases that have all kinds of curiosities in them.
Yeah, it looks like a modern art museum.
Yeah.
As close as they can get in that world. Lots of skeletons all wired together, lots of bones, things behind glass panels, things on little pedestals, little plaques describing everything. I imagine a very echoey hallway with like a security guard standing in the corner. You get the mental
basically
picture. Yeah.
And as Nynaeve is looking around, a handsome woman suddenly appeared beside a glass case with 4 carved legs on the middle of the floor. She was no terror upon her. And at first, Nynaeve is like, she'll disappear in a second, and then she doesn't. She's like, oh, who's this?
And if there's one character who I say is the dark mirror to Nynaeve, it's Moghedien. Because whereas Nynaeve takes her fear and conquers it, Moghedien gives in to her fear and hides.
I like that. Moghedien the spider and Nynaeve the lion.
Yeah.
Like kind of opposites,
Opposite, but like very equivalent in power. And just very mirror images of each other. Sort of the one is the corrupted version of the other. What Nynaeve could be if her life had gone poorly, and she hadn't been raised well in the Two Rivers.
I can see that.
Because can you think what would happen if Nynaeve, her temper got the better of her and she lost control and decided to just do everything her way, and to do things her way she just needed power. And she just knows right over everybody else. And, it's just so easy to see her going down that path to evil and, being well, I need the power.
Yeah, she certainly has enough ego for it. I love Nynaeve as a character, but part of the reason I love her is because she's such a believable, real person.
She's so damn flawed.
Yeah. And, she really means well, but she really thinks highly of herself,
Yeah, no, and that's, when they say, what does the Dark One look for in his Forsaken more than anything else? It's ego, it's selfishness, it's the desire to, and Nynaeve certainly, gives up. But what would have happened to Nynaeve if, the Two Rivers folks all died, and she didn't have anyone left to protect, and she was out in the world, and, bitter and angry, and,
I can see it.
Yeah. Forced to do things that she doesn't want to do in order to to protect people who end up dying anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually didn't mark this to read, but I'm going to read this little part where That's just like 2 paragraphs where Nynaeve realizes she knows who Moghedien is and she's seen her before.
She breaks out of the compulsion that her mind was put under.
The mist-clad woman still stood in front of the distant white pedestal. Trembling spread from Nynaeve's arm and to her shoulder. She had certainly never seen the woman before, and yet she tried to open her fingers. They only clamped down harder. Surely she never had. Shivering from head to toe, she hugged herself with the one arm she had free. Surely her teeth wanted to chatter. The woman seemed... She wanted to weep. The woman... Images burst into her head, exploding. She slumped against the column beside her as if they had physical force. Her eyes bulged. She saw it again. The Chamber of Falling Blossoms, and that sturdily handsome woman surrounded by the glow of Saidar, herself and Elaine, babbling like children, fighting to be the first to answer, pouring out everything they knew. How much had they told? It was difficult to bring out details, but she dimly remembered keeping some things back. Not because she wanted to. She would have told the woman anything, done anything she asked for. Her face heated with shame and anger. If she had managed to hide any scraps, it was only because she had been so eager to answer the last question asked that she passed over earlier. I don't know. Do you have any comments on Nynaeve breaking out of the compulsion?
The compulsion? Just, that we know that strong-willed people are able to break it down over time, and certainly they've had, I don't think it was the strongest of compulsions. I think that basically Moghedien just sort of put a little light weave on there saying like, okay, be nice to me and now forget it. And like figured whatever, if they remember something after a while, it's not a big deal. And only the strongest willed would break out of that anyway.
And Nynaeve is one of the strongest willed. Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't count on, Nynaeve being, as stubborn as she is. I also wonder if this is maybe an aspect of being in Teleron Riyadh. Certainly we see that with Perrin at the end of the series, where being in Teleron Riyadh allows him to change basically the reality about himself, including the weave that was put on him. So I have to wonder if maybe she's able to somehow, her subconscious communicates to her through like the grasping of the braid, and that gives her enough of an impetus to like break through. And if she uses the reality changing ability of Teleron Riyadh, just
I
a
like
thought.
That. Yeah.
And we know that Moghedien doesn't immediately recognize her because she looks like Rendera, not like Nynaeve. But if she didn't have a new face on, Moghedien would have probably
recognized her.
And exactly. So she got really lucky there. And so she's about to fight back when Brigida appears and stops her.
Nynaeve's filled with rage. She's about to reach for the true source, and Brigida was suddenly visible beside the next column in that short white coat and wide yellow trousers gathered at the angle.
Brigida Trehillian. Well, not yet, but I really like Brigida.
Me too.
Yeah, and we get a lot of information about Heroes of the Horn here, about those of us who are bound to the wheel are not dead as others are dead. Where better for us to wait until the wheel weaves us out in new lives than wait in the world of dreams. Just a lot of really good information about sort of the Heroes of the Horn and how that works, and the relationship between Moghedien and Brigida in the past life when she stood, side by side with LTT, and how she promised to make her pay and suffer, and a lot of good history there.
I never really picked up on this before, but I just kind of liked that, Nynaeve says, "You're the heroine of 100 tales, and I saw what your arrows did at Falma. Shan-Chan channeling did not touch you." And she's like, "We could really use help from someone like you." And Brigida's like, "Sorry, can't." Little does everyone know.
Yeah, well,
you're going to be a major player in this soon.
She's like, well, there's only 2 ways I can come out. The horn can be blown or I can be reborn. And I'm not going to be much use as a reborn baby. And it's like, well, there's actually a third way. There is a third way. And I think she gives a hint to it here to say, like, yeah, when I'm called by the horn, I'm untouched because I'm, like, in a different realm and we have the protection of the horn. But here in Teleron Riyadh, I'm not supposed to interact. And by interacting, I'm, like, basically, I don't have any protection. And if Moghedien gets her hands on me, she could kill me just as easily. And if she kills me here, I'm dead for good.
Right.
And so, she's taking a huge, huge risk by interacting with them because she's basically, like, losing any insurance and protection that she may have had.
I also thought it was kind of interesting that, this seems like she's really not supposed to do this. And Brigida even says, "I do not know why I'm explaining any of this. I shouldn't even be talking to you. And it just made the works churn in my head, just wondering, like, Ta'Veren, or, you know, the great need of these characters that are totally unprepared to save the world at this point, or, like, why does this happen?
I always suspected it was Ta'Veren pulling, that basically Rand needed the girls to have Brigida in order to survive this. I don't know. I don't have a good theory as to why, other than, like, Brigida felt a need to fight evil, even as a dead woman. She's just that good of a person. Like, that's the only other explanation I have, is she's just that.
Rauco says braid power. Brigida and Nynaeve.
She saw Nynaeve's and was like, that's a nice braid, and like followed her around for a while, totally got involved in her life.
So this girl's got her shit together.
Brigida is kind of judgy. She's like, yeah, I've been following you guys around. She's like, yeah, you're doing okay. Not great.
Could be worse, I guess.
Congratulations on not getting killed by Moghedien. You kind of barely managed that, but I had to jump in the last minute because you are not ready to fight her.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing that kind of piqued the same train of thought in my head is Brigida also says, evil walks the dream as well as the world of flesh. You who fight it attract me. Even knowing I can do almost nothing, I find myself wanting to help you, but I cannot.
And then we get, I feel like, our only actual glimpse of Gaidal Cain. This is the only time I think, all of the times I feel like we see his, like, silhouette or, like, hear his voice, but I think this is the only time we actually see him, quote unquote, in the dream flesh. Yeah,
it's the only time we really see him. I think, like, when Matt blows the horn, he mentions that, like, he knows who everyone is and he sees him, but we don't get a real description.
Right.
This is Gaidal actually standing there and, like, arguing with Brigida.
With his ugly ass face. Honestly, like, the description is almost the exact same as a Trolloc. Or, sorry, as an Ogier.
That's a good point. Nynaeve draws the comparison. Brigida and Nynaeve are talking, and Brigida goes on to, like, at the end of the paragraph that I was just reading from, says, even speaking to you violates precepts as strong as law. It does, said a harsh male voice, and Gaidal appears. To be like, what are you doing? You know them's the rules. Nynaeve jumped and almost lashed out with the power. The man was dark and strongly muscled, with the long hilts of two swords thrusting above his shoulders as he strode the few paces from where he had appeared to Brigida. With what she had heard from Brigida, the swords were enough to name him as Gaidal Cain. But where fair, golden-haired Brigida was as beautiful as in the stories, he was definitely not. In fact, he was perhaps as ugly a man as Nynaeve had ever seen, his face wide and flat, his heavy nose too big, and his mouth a gash, far too broad. Brigida smiled at him, though. Her touch on his cheek held more than fondness. It was a surprise to see he was the shorter. Stocky and muscled as he was, powerful in his movements, he gave the impression of being taller than he was.
I just like to make the point that I think Timber just was asleep and snored so loud he woke himself up and then, like, startled himself because, like, he doesn't normally snore, but he's like,
I've totally done that.
He's like face down because we were out for a while today, so he got quite a bit of exercise, so he's like, we're very, very tired. I'm just like, oh, you're being a cutie.
Yeah, I've totally done that. Like, what? Snoring? Who's snoring? Open your eyes. Oh. Me. Next thing I have is, I had marked out, like, a page to read that's basically Brigida and Nynaeve talking about Moghedien specifically, as Gaidal stands with his back to Nynaeve, pretending she's not there while sharpening a sword. He's like...
And I'm sure sharpening the sword in Teleron Riyadh makes a huge difference to how sharp it is.
Yeah. No, I think he's there to pester Brigida and be like, you shouldn't be doing this. Uh-huh. I'm certainly not going to talk to her, but I'm here to, like, try to bring you back. But Brigida's not listening to him. She's like, yeah, I'll be right there. Brigida turned to Nynaeve. I will aid you as I can, but do not expect too much. Teleron Riyadh is the whole of my world, and I can do less here than you. Nynaeve blinked. The dark, heavy man had not moved that she had seen, but he suddenly stood 2 paces away, drawing a honing stone along one of his swords with a soft, silky rasp. Plainly, as far as he was concerned, Brigida was speaking to the air. "What can you tell of Mogedion, Brigida? I must know what I can, to face her." Leaning on her bow, Brigida frowned thoughtfully. Facing Mogedion is difficult, and not only because she is forsaken. She hides and takes no risks. She attacks only where she sees weakness, and moves only in shadows. If she fears defeat, she will run. She is not one to fight to the last, even when doing so has the chance of victory. A chance is not enough for Mogedion, but do not take her lightly. She is a serpent coiled in the high grass, waiting her own moment to strike, with less compassion than the snake. Especially here, do not take her lightly. Lanfear always claimed Tel'aran'rhiod for her own, but Mogedion could do things here far beyond Lanfear. Though she has not Lanfear's strength in the world of flesh, I think she would not risk confronting Lanfear. Nynaeve shivered. Fear warring with the anger that let her contain the power. Mogedion, Lanfear, this woman spoke so casually of Forsaken. "Brigida, what did Mogedion promise you?" "She knew what I was, even though I did not. How, I do not know." Brigida glanced at Cain. He appeared absorbed in his sword, but she lowered her voice anyway. "She promised to make me weep alone as long as the wheel turns. She said it as a fact that simply had not happened yet. And yet, you are willing to help." "As I can, Nynaeve. Remember that I told you not to expect too much." Once more she looked at the man sharpening his sword. "We will meet again, Nynaeve, if you are careful and survive." Hefting her silver bow, she went to put an arm around Cain's shoulders and murmur in his ear. Whatever she said, Cain was laughing as they vanished.
Any idea what she said?
Something dirty. It's Brigida. Like, that would be so in character. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that works. She's like, "I'll go make it up to you. Come on."
Yeah. And mood changed.
Oh, that's thank you for that laugh. I needed that one.
Kelsey agrees with me.
No, I totally, I'm 100% down. That's my headcanon now. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So basically, she goes back to where Mogedion was standing, and she's left at this point. Like, Brigida's distracted her enough that Mogedion is left, so she can no longer do the whole confrontation thing, which I assume was Brigida's goal to begin with.
Yeah.
But she goes and checks out the spot where Mogedion was standing and sees a few things. And I think it's important to know that, like, Mogedion has actually hidden them in the real world by, like, casting Mask of Mirrors over them and inverting it. So they're visible in Tel'aran'rhiod, but in the real world, you can't see the items because they've been hidden with a weave, an inverted weave.
Mm.
So that's partially why the Black Sisters are having so much trouble finding the items, is they've been hidden by Mogedion.
I forgot all about that. I'm glad you pointed that out.
And, like, the only reason that Nynaeve is able to find them, and she's like, "Wait, shouldn't this be the seal?" And she, like, puts her hand through the illusion, and there's the seal. And there's, like, a statue on top of the sad bracelets. And she's like, "Wait, this is where the sad bracelets were." And sure enough, there they are.
She stretched her hand out to touch it, jerked back, pain, sorrow, suffering.
And even though sad's not in the description, pain, sorrow, and suffering, apparently sad.
And so she remembers the white stone pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Just to the perspective switch. She stretched her hand out to touch it. Pain, sorrow, suffering, and jerked it back, gasping. The raw emotions still echoing in her head. Even her faint doubts vanished. This was what the Black Aja was hunting. And if it still sat on this pedestal in Tel'aran'rhiod, it sat there in the waking world, too. She had beaten them. This white stone pedestal. Whirling around, she stared toward the glass case that held the Quendiar seal, located the place she had been standing where she first saw Mogedion. The woman had been looking at this pedestal, at the bracelets and collar. Mogedion had to know, but everything around her spun and blurred, fading. "Wake up, Nynaeve," Elaine muttered.
And I also like to point out there's a crocodile skull. There's bones of a toothy lizard 10 paces long. I think that's a crocodile skeleton. Sorry.
Oh, cool. Yeah. 10 paces. Damn.
Right, that's a crocodile, right?
Huge. They do get that big, I think. Or,
In Florida? Yeah, sure.
There's fossilized versions that get like way bigger than that.
Oh, sure.
Nynaeve wakes up like still talking as if she's in the dream, and then Elaine's like, What are you talking about? I will tell you what I'm talking about. Elaine's mouth fell open as Nynaeve unfolded the tale.
Guess what happened? I went into the dream and all this shit happened. It was kind of a lot. A meeting, and then a thing, and then another thing. A meeting, and then Brigida, and then Mogedi, or whatever, Mogedi, and then Brigida, and then finding the sad bracelets and finding a seal. Like, big news. A lot of things in the palace that they've been looking for.
I mean, Aeginin is sitting there listening as well, so Nynaeve and Elaine quickly come to the conclusion that this is like an add-on for a man, to control a man who can channel, and Aeginin's like, I've never heard of anything like that, but Elaine figures it out.
Any Terran-Grial in a collar shape, they're going to have to assume is like, that's a dominant for somebody. And like, they know it's for use against Rand. So it's like, okay, a collar for use against Rand, like a collar against a channeler is no good unless it can prevent them from channeling. And then of course, it's basically an ADOM for a man. Of course, we hear a lot more about how it's got like weird feedback loops and you can't use it without like eventually going mad yourself because of the whole taint issue. So, there's some interesting problems where.
So unless you're a Forsaken, basically.
Yeah. And even then, like, you end up bound to them as well as they are bound to you. There's like this at some point, like, because it creates a forced circle, like, because with two women, right, you can exchange the lead back and forth, no problem. Yeah. So I'm guessing that like that has some relationship to basically the man is then able to take control over the two people who are supposed to have control over him. Sort of in the same way that Kalendor allows two female channelers to take control of a male. It's sort of very similar concept with except instead of bracelets and a collar, essentially by picking up Kalendor, you're forcing the collar on yourself and leaving the bracelets open to anyone who wants to pick them up. Kalendor is the trap. That's the whole interesting thing about it. Just a trap for who? Moradin.
And as they're sitting there talking about it, they hear a clatter and a thump outside in the hall.
The Seeker tried to follow, probably because Aeginin had been in there for a long time. They'd taken a prisoner, and he'd been sort of
lurking and watching her.
So he's probably like wondering what's going on. Did she disappear? Is she trying to sneak away? He didn't expect her to stay in there because she didn't expect to stay in there.
Right. And so we walk outside and we see that the guy was just casually walking down the hallway, apparently, past Tom, and then suddenly Tom was getting kicked in the face out of nowhere. Luckily, Damon and Julin both had walked up a moment ago to see if Tom wanted to be relieved from watch. 3
decent brawlers against one, and no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
Julin, Tom, and Damon are all excellent unarmed fighters. So they knock him the hell out.
Julin hits him. Yeah, over the head. So there's a crumpled man on the floor, and Aeginin knows who it is as well, and explains.
This is that Seeker who was following her earlier, the guy who broke someone's arm and almost gave himself away, the one who like sat her down and interviewed her when she had a captive Damani in her basement, and later the one who I believe thinks. Is this the one who thinks Tom is like the mastermind and Matt?
Yes.
Which is interesting because, yeah.
Seeker.
Interesting that he's the one who he fights Tom here. I wonder if he realizes it's the same one as later when he encounters him with Matt and Tuon. Probably not.
Maybe not. A good blow to the head should make you forget what happened for like the last minute.
Right, and he barely sees him, and then like it's many, many months later when they all come back.
Right.
And it's not even in Tanchico. It's in a whole nother city as well. It's in Ebu Dar. Huh. Anyway, funny coincidence.
There is a moment where like Aeginin walks outside in her shift to see what's going on, and Dumon's like, hey, what's up? I just wanted to point that out, that there's like a moment of awkward eye contact, and I think they're both kind of...
Well, he checks her out pretty blatantly. He's like, nice body.
He's not hiding it or anything.
No, he's definitely not. And she's like, well, I never really thought about it, but if he's interested, he's pretty cute. I don't know. He's rich, he's well muscled. Like, I don't really understand it, but some of the women in this thing really like ugly men. Brigida,
I think it's just like the super masculine end of the spectrum. Like Brigida's really into like this huge, muscly, hairy dude who's like,
really tough guy.
He appeals the extreme masculinity. And I think everybody's got palate. Everybody's palate's different. Why not Damon? He's a good looking guy.
Yeah. Well, and she's so freaked out by her shift because it's what Shay dancers wear, which is like horribly demeaning in her culture to like be caught out in a shift. So like even though it's like thicker than like some dresses she was wearing, it's still a shift, and that's totally...
I feel like it's like the equivalent of Western person being caught outside in like 9-inch heels and a bikini. Like you look like a sex worker,
Yeah, right.
Like the light up 9-inch heel. What
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, oh my God, I look like a stripper. And that's essentially the cultural, whatever.
Yeah. It's just cultural shame for a specific underdress.
I did kind of want to point out also that as Aginen's talking, she says, he's a Shan-Chan. Nynaeve's like, is this a rescue attempt? And Aginen says, I do not doubt he was looking for me, but not for rescue, I think. If he knows or even suspects that I let Bethaman go free, he would be wanting to talk with me. It might be best if he slit his throat. He may try to make trouble for you, too, if he thinks you are my friends, or if he discovers your Aes Sedai. The big Illianer smuggler gave her a shocked look, and Julian's jaw dropped almost to his chest. Tom, on the other hand, nodded in a disturbingly thoughtful fashion. I just wanted to point that out.
Tom has killed a few...
Tom's the one who's like, yeah, we should probably cut this one loose.
And he's killed a few kings, so, killing someone for political or motivational reasons is not foreign to him in the slightest.
Yeah. As opposed to, I think, Julian and Duman, who are not assassins. Like, although they've been in fights, they're for reasons. And it's not that Tom fights aren't for reasons. They're just for, ideological or political reasons, as opposed to saving my own life type deal,
they'll stand up and defend themselves, but...
not slit a unconscious man's throat.
Right. Or, set two people up to kill each other when neither one of them really wants to, or something like that. That's just, it doesn't make sense to them. Or kill someone for political expediency.
As Tom's like, probably the most economic way to handle this is just kill the guy while he's sleeping, and then we're done with it. And then it won't be a problem in the future. Guaranteed. Oh, boy. And then I think I just have the readout after that.
Yeah, that's sort of the end of the chapter.
Wondering what a Shay dancer was, Elaine went to help her with her buttons. Rendra will have something to say to you if you allow Julian to flirt with you. The dark-haired woman gave her a startled look over her shoulder. The thief-catcher? It was Bail Doman I meant. A properly set-up man. But a smuggler. She sighed regretfully. A lawbreaker. Elaine supposed there was no accounting for tastes. Nynaeve certainly loved Lan, and he was much too stone-faced and intimidating. But Bail Doman? The man was half as wide as he was tall, as thick as an ogier. You chatter like Rendra, Elaine, Nynaeve snapped. Ooh. She was struggling to do up her dress, both hands behind her. If you have finished blathering about men, perhaps you won't mind skipping over the new seamstress you've no doubt found. We must make plans. If we wait until we're with the men, they will try to take it over, and I'm in no mood to waste time putting them in their place. Have you finished with her yet? I could use some help myself. Quickly fastening Aginen's last small button, Elaine went coolly to Nynaeve. She did not talk about men in dresses, not nearly as much as Rendra. Holding her braids out of the way, Nynaeve gave her a frown when she tugged sharply at the other woman's dress to do up the buttons. The closed-spaced triple row up the back was necessary, not simply ornament. Nynaeve would let Rendra tuck her into the most fashionably tight bodices, and then say other people spent all their time talking about clothes. She certainly thought about other things. I have been thinking about how we can move inside the palace unnoticed, Nynaeve. We can be all but invisible. As she talked, Nynaeve's frown smoothed out. Nynaeve herself had conceived a way to enter the palace. When Aginen made a few suggestions, Nynaeve's mouth tightened, but the notions were sensible, and even Nynaeve could not reject them out of hand. By the time they were ready to go down to the Chamber of Falling Blossoms, they had a plan agreed upon, and no intention of letting the men change a whit of it. Maggedion, the Black Aja, whoever were running things in the Panarch's palace were going to lose their prizes before they knew what had happened.
What was their plan? Was it just to dress up like servants?
I'm going to be totally honest and just say that I don't remember what happens next. Exactly. I remember, like, the scene with Nynaeve and Moghedien, like, I remember that, but I don't remember how they sneak in. I am guessing Elaine's clever plan is she was like, we'll dress up as servants. Surely nobody's thought of that before.
Yeah, I know.
Would be like her. Devious. We'll dress as commoners.
Yeah, they get dresses from Bail Domon for...
Oh, they used him on to deliver more peppers.
Oh, that's right.
Bribe,
that's what it is. The pepper delivery thing. That's how they get in. Because that's how he found them in the first place, is with the ice pepper delivery.
Yeah.
And so then they just deliver the ice peppers, and that's right, because then they find out. Do
the girls walk in with the...
Yeah, with the ice peppers as the delivery.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the people are like, more? Huh, all right, the queen seems to like them. She keeps eating them. And then there's the whole scene with her singing bawdy songs, and then they confront a Forsaken, or a Black Otter, I mean.
And I love... It's so Nynaeve, but I love that Nynaeve gets into the, like, pushing match with Moghedien, but with the power.
Yeah.
And they, like, come to a standstill, and Nynaeve, like, picks up a doorstop and hits her and throws it at her face or something.
She picks up the sad bracelets and hits her with them.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember exactly what it was. I just remember she picks something up and hits her with it.
Totally.
It's like, that's so Nynaeve, thinking outside of the box. Thinking as a non-channeler, you know? Oh, and Domon talks his way into it, essentially, saying, like, well, you know this as well as I do. Like, yeah, sure, you can protect yourself with channeling, but as soon as you channel, you'll reveal yourself. So what you're going to need is me.
Store, Trader Joe's, for a while, and the milk would expire the next day. It wouldn't expire today. It would expire the next day. It was weird because it was like 2 days out, right? Like we could still sell it the next day, but it was just one of those things where I'd just be dumping gallons and gallons and gallons of milk down the drain, just one after the other, to the point where, like, the smell of milk made me sick for a while, just because, like, I had, like, literally, like, it was this almost half shower like thing that you'd, like, just dump it and the whole thing would just be coated with milk, and then you have to hose it out.
Yeah, it's weird. You eventually got desensitized to it, but when I first started working in restaurants, I was like, this is atrocious. I can't believe that this much food is thrown away on a regular basis. And there's all kinds of rules about it too, like if a plate touches a table and a customer sends it back, no one can legally have that food. It has to go in the garbage.
And that happens every single time.
Well, no, but it's illegal to eat it or give it to anyone else, or...
Oh, God, the number of times, though, when I was washing dishes and a plate would come back untouched, and I'd just be like, okay, this is my dinner now.
We've all done it. The other day, I gave there was a middle-aged woman came in with a bunch of friends, and she started talking about how she was once a waitress, and she was making jokes about eating out of bus tubs. So, and I just overheard her from, like, across the restaurant, so I went and put the industry discount on her ticket. Because I was like, I know you know what this is all about. Yeah. It's like, even if this is a couple years out of date, you can still have the discount.
God, and when I was working at the Old Salt, these plates would come back with, like, $30 steaks that were virtually untouched sitting on them, and I'd just be like, oh, you're killing me.
I once, like 10 years ago, went on a date with this girl, and I remember being, like, alarmed that she ordered a burger and fries, ate a couple of fries, one bite of the burger, and that was it. It's like, oh. It like really upset me. I mean, I didn't say anything at the time, but like, just bring it home. Like anything, feed it to your dog. Like, just don't waste it. But that was it. Just like, why did you just order $15 of food if you were just going to have...
Someone cooked that. Like, do you know how much work goes into a burger? Like, not a lot, but like, but some, like some work goes into it. Like, don't...
It just seemed insane to me.
And like, someone raised the cow and killed it and slaughtered it and ground it up and made it into a patty and threw it on a grill and raised the grain and ground it up and made it into a bun and like...
Get it,
your cheese fermented, like at least. At least like binge and purge. Come on, enjoy it once.
I'm not touching that. But that's totally a thing, is my point. And like, that is not the last time I've saw someone do that. Especially order really nice food. Like, that was just ordering fries.
Yeah.
You're like a $30 steak, take a bite, throw it away. You're a crazy person.
You can tell we're both really upset by this.
Emotional about this.
I mean, I feel like you can't work in food service for a little while without like really internalizing just like how much waste goes into just day in and day out. But the thing is, like, it's not like home cooking is any less wasteful. It's just not all in one place. Like, how many people buy groceries and just let them rot in the fridge? How many people like don't eat the leftovers? Like, how many people...
I mean, it happens to me sometimes. I still get inordinately upset every time I'm like, there's $5 of blueberries right in the trash every time. I'm like, ugh.
We give everybody a lot of fries and nobody eats all the fries. So the trash is like pounds and pounds and pounds of potatoes. And they come in 50-pound boxes and they go out in 25-pound compost bags.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?